A very good morning to all of you. I'm basically a parasitologist working on the monogenian parasites, which belong to the phylum Platyhelminths. I understand that many of the audience members may not be aware of the monogenians, so I have structured my talk more as a classroom lecture. First, I will introduce you to the world of the monogenians, and then I will move to the details of today's talk. It's not working. Yep, starts. So, fish represents the oldest known vertebrates. More than 30,000 species have already been discovered. But like any other vertebrate groups, these fish are susceptible to a variety of pathogens, parasites, both the micro and macro. All these parasites belongs to the phylum Protozoa, Metazoa, involving platyhelminths, nematoda, acanthocephali, arthropoda, and so on. Now, first the monogenia. Monogenians are primarily the ectoparasites of the fish. So they are found on the gills and the skin of the fish, but they can exploit the snails, crabs, even the frogs, tortoise, turtles, and at least one species of monogenia is known from the eyes of hippopotamus. No monogenian is known from the birds so far. Well, their body is very simple. They have a head which has the photoreceptor cells. Then they have the trunk which houses the reproductive and the digestive organs. But then their posterior body part is highly modified and we call it hapter. This hapter, as you can see here, is armed with these sclerotized structures variously known as the anchors, bar, hooks, and so on. And in this video, you can see how these haptoral parts are moving, and their movement is actually injurious to the fish gills because their movement just erodes the epithelial surface of the fins, and that's when the fish suffers. This is how the life cycle of the monogenians goes. It's a case of the direct life cycle, so which means there is no involvement of any intermediate host. The eggs come out of the gills or the skin, they hatch in the open aquatic system, give rise to the one larvae known as Onchomycetidium, which goes back to the fish. Now the monogenians are just not diverse in their numbers because already 7,000 species have been discovered. They are diverse in their morphology as well. As you can see, the different morphologies being depicted here. But more interestingly, they are very diverse in their ecology as well. So right from the ancestral habitat, which was the skin and the gills on the right side, now you can see they have colonized virtually every organ of the fish: rectal glands, stomachs, nasal cavity, esophagus, urinary bladder, and I'm aware of the one monogenian which is known from even the heart of the fish. This is how, these little tiny objects are actually the monogenian parasites right there over the gills of the fish, and you can see they can practically cover the whole gill epithelium and the respiratory surface of the fish. This is how, the poster boy of the monogenian world, known to be injurious and causing high economic damages, Gyrodactylus salaris on the left side. And you can see its hooks are practically embedded in the, I'm so sorry, this is somehow, go back. Yes, embedded in the skin, and that just erode the epithelial surface. Then you can see some marks over there in the right corner. These marks are caused by the feeding habits of the monogenian parasites. The end result is that they open the entry points for the opportunistic microorganisms. And one classic example which I can cite here comes from the Baltic and the Atlantic Ocean. So there is a salmon, salmosalar fish, known from both the Baltic Sea and the Atlantic Sea. It actually has the two strains. Now of them, the Baltic salmosalar is infected with the Gyrodactylus parasite, which is supposed to be native on that fish, and there is an Atlantic strait of the same fish. In the late 1970s, Norwegian government imported some of these salmons from the Baltic area to augment their production and populated them in their rivers. The net result was that these monogenians made a switch from the Baltic salmons to the Atlantic salmons. And the Atlantic salmons were, because never exposed before to this parasite, so they just succumbed to the death. Overall, 40 rivers were badly infected, and the Norwegian government had to incur more than $500 million just to recover from this single species of the monogenian parasites. Initially, it was attributed, the death was attributed to some pollutions or some other factors, but later on the simulation model studies in the lab confirmed that on the resistant Baltic salmons, the Gyrodactylus salaris didn't survive for the long time, but on the susceptible Atlantic salmons, it reproduced exponentially. That caused their death. Now the host specificity of the monogenians. So host specificity is basically the restriction of the parasites to certain number of the host species.